Hello everyone, my name is Brent Barlow. Welcome to Blue Light Daily, a discussion of topics of relevance and import. We're broadcasting this on Thursday, September 25th, 2025. It is 12 noon local, 1900 Zulu for our international friends. Among the values we embrace here is the importance of public debate, civility towards all, the necessity of education, the strength of knowledge, the value of coming together to help each other to be better. I'm going to share my personal libation, which I offer at meeting openings. I think I'm going to do this regularly, kind of get us oriented to start. We pause to reflect and focus on our work. Breathing in deeply, aligning with intention, dreaming the I'm possible. The words spoken, the path clear, the way cool. Assisted by ancestors, powered by providence, rooted in reverence, let us build what is worthy. Let us remember the dream forgotten. Let's make some magic together now. Ashe Madase. Today's word of the day is anomaly. Anomaly is a noun. An anomaly is a thing remarkable in its deviation from what's usual or expected. An anomaly. We're going to add a new section. Today's quote of the day. Today's quote of the day is from Superman, Christopher Reeves, born on this day, 1952. Quote, I think a hero is an ordinary individual who finds the strength to persevere and endure in spite of overwhelming obstacles. Thought that was worth. It is my intention that this broadcast serve as a platform to talk, share, learn, and grow together. To that end, I am actively soliciting input and feedback from everyone and anybody who hears this message. I want to thank those who've already reached out with their comments and their thoughts. Thank you. I see this as a we thing. Okay? I'm just the vehicle to get the word out. There are current conditions which are cause for concern. And rather than bitch and complain, I propose action. In my experience, liberation can be found in taking action. If I take personal responsibility for my condition, then I have the ability to change my condition. If I blame it on others, I'm subject to their control. To me, as I said yesterday, there are a number of lifelong pursuits we attend to varying degrees. I mentioned the pursuit of self-improvement, the pursuit of companionship, the pursuit of passion, learning, creating, being you. I also believe that there are, or that we each embody various personal philosophies. I've shared some of mine. I believe these philosophies inform our actions and which we honor situationally more often than not. I mentioned the cafeteria Catholic that I was married to. Sorry. But, you know, there are people who choose what aspects of a specific religion they claim to practice that are elements that they're willing to incorporate into their life, and they dismiss the rest. That's a choice. And that's their personal philosophy is they're a religious person, and they choose to honor that situationally. That's what I'm saying there. But the one thing that we can't escape is our actions. You may have heard the story of two guys who go to a bar and they both drink past the legal limit, and on their drive home they get ticketed for a DUI. First guy says, Jesus Christ, I'm never going to do that again. Go to the bar, get drunk, and drive home after I've had a few. And the second guy said, I'm never doing that again. There's cops all over that route. I'm going home a different way. it comes down to making a choice. People make choices, and our choices are who we become. For example, my inclination to shade the truth, a reluctance to be candid, because I can be smarter than you. I can frame it in a way that I actually don't lie, but I don't disclose the truth. And that became my living construct. That became who I was. I created my reality. And if I continue to do what I've always done, I'll continue to get what I've always gotten. And I finally matured to a point where I realized that I didn't like being that person when called out by people I love as being dishonest or disrespectful or not honoring the covenant of our relationship. And faced with that reality, I can choose to do things differently than the way I've done things in the past. It requires a level of self-awareness and a desire to be better, to make a change. But what I focus on expands. And if I just make a decision and I take action, I see change. That's my experience. In all the literature that I've read, that seems to be a common theme from Tony Robbins to Confucius. So I choose to be the person I am. I am not the person I am unconsciously or haphazardly. I know who I am. And I'm putting myself out there. I believe people who smile, people who are joyful, are viewed as more attractive. I can't believe how often I'm walking down the street, people are glued to their phones, or they're looking at their feet, and they're unwilling to engage in eye contact, let alone say hello to one another. I've scared the hell out of a number of people saying hello as I approach and pass them walking on the street. So as far as this goes, this is a work in progress. This is an evolutionary thing. I don't know what it is yet, but I'm going to try to do it, and that is cultivate some conversation. So I'm putting myself out there for public consumption and criticism. Recently, I mentioned a 2018 RAND Corporation report, Truth Decay, that described the corrosion of civility and common decency in American society as a result of a number of factors, including an inflammation of hostile political language, violent events which have been leveraged, a concentration of wealth, proliferation of social media and electronic devices, a lack of education. There are a whole bunch of things identified in that book, which are leading to, if you will, a bit of a crumbling of our society. I mentioned a second book, Unrestricted Warfare, which described asymmetrical warfare principally by China, but any state actor or any other actor with the wherewithal. Asymmetrical warfare is essentially a fight by one side. And in this case, in this book, what was articulated was the planting of basically sleeper agents, if you will, folks seated within the American society to stir up discontent, put there by state actors attacking us electronically, digitally through technology, and spoofing us, creating incredible social influence that we are unaware of. So we've been talking about the current conditions in the world and specifically in the U.S. And to that end, what we're going to do today is we're going to talk about what's happening, the social fracturing widening, the tensions being flamed, the toxic language being used, the absolute positions being taken, an unwillingness to listen, a framing of the issues as an either or. You either are with me or you're against me. Politicians being awarded for their extreme behavior. I want to do this by looking at actions taken by President Donald Trump that have sought to influence specifically the U.S. Department of Justice and specifically Attorney General Pam Bondi, which depart from long-standing norms designed to insulate federal law enforcement from political interference. Now, policing, law enforcement, is a function of the executive, and President Trump is the head of the federal executive. So he has the right, he oversees the enforcement arm of our government, the federal government. But there's been a baseline of insulation between the politics and what goes on, actual functioning of the DOJ. Because this is very important. This is one area of our civic life that you may not actually feel, but has a tremendous impact. The ability to influence the police state against the public is what we're talking about here. Since Watergate, administrations have maintained contact policies, limiting who from the White House can have contact with specific investigations or enforcement matters. Essentially, the core principle is that the DOJ's judgments have to be impartial and insulated from political influence, and the investigatory and prosecutorial powers exercised free from partisan considerations. Now, I'm using President Trump as an example, but every politician has to some extent at least thought about, if not attempted full-throatedly, to influence the various organs of government to bend them to their will, his will, because we're talking about the president's only been a man to this point. Post-Watergate attorneys general from both parties have reiterated this policy in written guidelines. The rules channel case-specific contacts through narrow channels, senior lanes, typically the AG, the Deputy Attorney General, and discourage any White House pressure on any individual case. And the deviation matters because that neutral zone between the White House and the DOJ provides a normative guardrail. We know what to expect. It's not constitutional, but it does not prevent the president from speaking lawfully, appointing, removing, doing all he wants. You're the king. You can make your play, baby. At least that's what seems to be the theme of the day. But when using those powers to steer individual cases for personal or partisan ends, that's precisely what the contact rules seek to prevent. And during President Trump's first term, I'm just going to go with documented cases. And one of my biggest hard-ons is people talking opinion and professing it to be facts. And I hate getting into political discussions with people because for too often, people talk out their butts. They just say what they think, feel, believe, saw on their social media channels, consumed on their news channels, and it becomes an echo chamber. That's a separate issue. I don't want to get into it, but a lack of perspective, a failure of a broader understanding, an unwillingness to listen contributes to all of these factors. But getting back to it, just looking at President Trump, just his actions, this is not to the exclusion of any other president who have done foul things or attempted to violate normative rules, procedures. I'm just using this as an example, okay? But bring it on if you think I'm being unfair. These are specific, documented actions taken by President Trump during his first term aimed at the DOJ and the FBI. First, direct request to protect an ally, Michael Flynn, you may remember, and to secure a loyalty oath from the FBI director, who at the time, if you'll recall, was James Comey. On January 27th, 2017, Trump had a loyalty dinner with James Comey, just the two of them. And basically Trump said, you're either with me or you're against me. And Comey said, not, thank you, but no. A couple weeks later, on February 14th, 2017, Trump said publicly, in an Oval Office one-on-one, I hope you can see your way to clear, excuse me, it's that much. I hope you can see your way clear to letting this go and letting Flynn go. The DOJ concluded that there was substantial evidence corroborating this account and the circumstances where Trump was trying to influence the investigation. Second, efforts to direct or limit the Russia/Mueller investigation through the DOJ, pressuring the AG, who at the time was Jeff Sessions. Trump demanded that he unrecuse and seize control of the Russia probe, pressuring Sessions to order staff to have Mueller removed, repeatedly pushing DOJ leaders to announce the president was not under investigation. I remember that. It was crazy. These attempts to intervene in investigations like this, they run counter to the contacts policy, which I mentioned earlier. And again, this is all documented through the Department of Justice. Trump's insistence, or his firing of James Comey, the FBI director, amid the Russia probe. Trump's termination of Comey in May 2017 was accompanied by statements later cited by Mueller, including telling Russian officials that firing Comey was, so said Trump, so said Comey, so was validated, verified, and confirmed by the Department of Justice. He said, she said, they said, we trusted, and we verified. Great pressure from Russia matter, underscoring the intent, that Trump told Russian officials that firing Comey relieved great pressure from Russia, underscoring the intent to shape the ongoing investigation through his personal actions. Again, while those powers of removal are within his authority under Article 2, the use of that power to affect a specific case breaks from the normative insulation that we have enjoyed for many years. Trump's public push to have the DOJ prosecute his opponents. He was loud about Clinton, Hillary, loud about Comey, wanted, at the time, White House counsel Don McGahn warned him that it was an abuse of power. He had people during his first term around him who were trying to keep him in check. Case-specific interventions benefiting his allies. You guys may remember Roger Stone, who was sentenced in February 2020. He got involved with that. Michael Flynn, also 2020. He attempted to enlist DOJ to overturn the 2020 election. Just say the election was corrupt. Contemporaneous notes and sworn testimony by acting Deputy Attorney General show Trump told DOJ leaders on December 27, 2020 to just say the election was corrupt and leave the rest to me and the Republican congressman. DOJ leaders refused. Trump then sought to install Jeffrey Clark as acting Attorney General to send a false fraud. Everybody knows what January 6th was about. Reported attempts to influence antitrust enforcement. Ousting U.S. Attorney General overseeing sensitive matters. Fired a Southern District of New York U.S. Attorney General Berman after refusing to resign amidst investigation touching on one of Trump's associates. These breaks are important because each episode, the White House crosses a line of permissible policy and attacks these things in a case-specific interference, requesting personnel moves, and in each particular investigation with each defendant, that very behavior is violative of those normative rules, those policies that have been reaffirmed time and again since Watergate, which were born out of the cluster that was Watergate. Eroding trust, I refer you again to Truth Decay. It's a very short and very informative book. During the current term, he's going crazy right now trying to pressure Attorney General Pam Bondi, who was appointed in February, the first thing he did was he asked for demanded an immediate review of federal prosecutions that involved Trump. So she ordered on February 5th a review of all the federal cases against him. She stood up a weaponization working group. Public and private pressure by the president to pursue named adversaries. He continues to push for an indictment against James Comey. Personnel intervention linked to those demands. Coverage indicates, and the Fourth Estate is a valuable asset in any free society. If you don't have free press and the ability for the public to know what's going on, for the light to be shined through investigative techniques and objective reporting. Coverage indicates AG Bondi installed Trump-aligned figures while the office handled matters Trump publicly demanded. Separate probe touching on New York Attorney General Letitia James. Moves criticized as politicizing prosecutorial discretion. This is from Politico. Broader pressure on Bondi to go after political foes. News reporting documents Trump's public calls urging Bondi to charge specific opponents, echoing first-term norms violations about using the DOJ against rivals. That's from NBC New York. The contacts policy and the post-Watergate doctrine emphasize that the White House must not press the DOJ on who to charge in what cases. Public demands to indict named opponents, plus targeted reshuffling of U.S. attorney leadership while those matters are pending, squarely conflicts with this tradition of insulation. Now, I'm not going to say this or that, but actions speak louder than words. In September 13, the Donald Trump Foundation donated $25,000 to Bondi's re-election campaign. But the bottom line is this, that the norms and rules that exist to prevent the White House from interfering in specific cases and to preserve the public trust, because that's really what it comes down to, in the neutrality of law enforcement, that Trump's patterns they represent a substantial break from these traditions. I'm going to end with this. It's our responsibility to act. We can either accept the status quo, the way things are, or we can make a decision. We can exercise our right to speak out. We can do. I'm willing to be brave enough to speak out, speak truth to power, and to accept that mine's not the only opinion that matters. However, I will hold all to the impeccability of their words. If you say one thing and you do something else, it's a cop-out, it reduces your reliability, you can't be trusted. I'll end with this. I've seen very little action taken by President Trump, and you've heard this maybe in the media, or by the current administration, that was not telegraphed long before it became a reality. We knew what we were getting, we got what we elected, and we are now enjoying that meal. You can either accept things as they are, or you can stand up and do something about it. Shit don't change till you get up and wash your ass. Kendrick Lamar. All right, folks, that's it. We've hit the wall, I've gone over. Thank you for watching. Please like, share, comment. Be well. God bless. Peace out.